this vape.
We're live.
Hello, I'm Matt Bergman, and you are listening to the Punk Rock Libertarians podcast, episode 252. I'm here tonight with Jared Schneiderman.
What up, everybody?
Philip Dassing.
Sup, nerds?
Kyle Wagner.
What are you calling me?
Hey, guys.
And Ethan Montgomery is back on the program.
Big Eth.
Bonjour.
Oh, okay. So, so let's... What topics do we have tonight on this shitboard, Kyle? What's number one? The Virginia Boogaloo? Is that, how do you say it? Is that how you say it? Boogaloo?
I don't know. They gave me the spelling on it. I don't know. Boogaloo?
The
big igloo.
Big igloo.
Yeah.
The Virginia salsa dance?
Yeah. I saw that, what's that guy? Connor Fisher or something like that? The journalist.
McGregor?
No, he's a journalist for News to Share. He posted
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What is his name? Is it Ford or Ford Fisher?
Yeah, Ford Fisher.
Yeah. There we go. I knew I would figure it out eventually. He posted a picture of his wardrobe or his getup. He's got like a helmet and like body protecting, and it says like media, but it's like a bulletproof vest or something like that. And you know, he's ready to go, man. He's ready for the shit show.
Wait, is he like what sort of publication is this?
Independent media. He's an on the street journalist who sort of tends to cover these sort of things. He was in Charlottesville, and anywhere there's going to be a left-right street violence, he's on the plane. You know, he wants to be in the middle of it.
There.
Yeah.
Is there really much indication there's going to be any left-right violence? I mean,
I've heard actually the opposite. I've heard that there's an Antifa chapter that plans on marching with the gun rights people.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I was going to say is that Antifa actually
Do you believe that, Jerry?
is going to be on their side.
I mean, it was in Vice, so I don't know if I can believe it or not, but you know, that would be something that Vice would typically not print. So
Maybe they'll.
that they are. The fact that they are is interesting.
I mean, tankies like their guns, so
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it doesn't shock me. You know, I was a little surprised when I heard it, but then it's like, well, you know, okay, that sort of makes sense. I mean, you know, you got like John Brown Gun Club and
and they also use the angle of that, you know, gun control is racist, which is, you know, the angle that Mastre also uses. So
Maybe they'll hold hands.
I think it's going to be more state worshippers versus anti-state, or at least pro 2A.
I don't think they're going to have much opposition at all in terms of like actual like citizenry. You know? I mean, the only real potential for violence is going to be between like police.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, you guys see the police they have a killdozer?
Yeah, I saw that. They're
That's
shipping
so
one in.
fucked up.
It's not as cool as the real killdozer.
Oh, well, of course, nothing will be as awesome as the real killdozer.
Yeah.
Is that where the guy like converted a bulldozer into a tank and then like plowed a government building? Or
The whole town.
Plowed the whole town.
Fucked him over.
It was over like unpaid parking
property
tickets
taxes,
or something
right?
like that, right?
Yeah, they were planning
Was it eminent domain?
Yeah, they were planning to like build a road in front of his, or like cut off his driveway so he can't get access to the road or something like that. I don't know.
More roads.
I forget. I'd have to read it. I haven't read up on that story.
It was
so
a little bit
long.
of an extreme reaction.
They never did
No,
stop
it was
him.
like constant years of like fucking with him, and
was
he
it?
just had enough.
He snapped. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like falling down, man.
Good for him.
Just
I mean, he's
went over.
dead, but good for him.
Well, I think it was self-inflicted gunshot wound, right?
yeah.
They were closing in. The killdozer like ran into a ditch or something, and it got stuck in the mud, and this guy took his own life. That's what happened. But anyway, I don't know. So you're saying the police have one of these things, like to just bulldoze the crowd?
It's like it's like a Bearcat or some sort of, you know, like up armored vehicle of some sort. I mean, the one picture I saw, like, it actually looked like a straight up bulldozer. So I don't know what that was all about. But like, you know, it's like, you know, this SWAT tactical Bearcat type militarized shit.
So let's just
Which I think really, like, it's not so much that they're intending, like, obviously when they say like, oh, we're hearing credible threats of violence and blah blah blah, it's all bullshit. It's all completely made up.
Yeah.
It's all just purely optics on behalf of like the governor and the Democrats, whatever, in Virginia, just to try to make it look like the most dramatic, scary thing possible.
Jared, would you say it's the Zionist media?
Did they already declare a state of emergency?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's from what I can tell, it's just going to be a peaceful protest.
Yeah, of course it is.
You know.
But
You know,
they're treating it like it's.
Well, no, it's
like the Wolverines are coming down from the mountains in Red Dawn. Like
Yeah.
that's what the fucking cops are taking it as. It's such bullshit, man. You should see all.
I
know, right?
They all know it's bullshit.
But they've had
Or
drones.
it's just all right-wing white supremacists.
That's
fascists.
if you read the local media, of course.
Is David Hall going to be there?
Probably.
Apparently, okay. So
Is
Cal.
Caitlin Bennett going to be there?
No, of course
Oh
not.
man.
Dude, but Cal Mono.
You gonna ask her out?
Spaghetti head.
But Cal from Liberate RVA.
What's he doing?
Cal's definitely
He's
gonna be
there. So this is his home turf. So
It's his
he's there.
backyard.
Well, he posted a picture of a video or of a car, and it had a bunch of InfoWars stickers on it. And he talked to the guy, and apparently he like works or something. But he said that Alex Jones is going to be in Richmond.
Oh God.
So he's already.
Oh yes. Nice.
I'm pretty excited about it. I hope that comes to fruition.
I wish
but-
I didn't have
He
to
rolls
work.
in on a tank, dude.
Oh
like
my
he did-
God.
Like he went to that Hillary thing. He just like rolled in on a tank, yelling like Epstein didn't kill himself.
How do these people like not have to be at work on Monday? It's on
'Cause
Monday,
it's a
right?
holiday.
Is it?
It's MLK Day,
it's
you
MLK, dude.
racist.
Oh jeez.
All these people have worked
I
for the
don't- I don't-
government, apparently.
Oh yeah.
The hilarious ass meme where it shows that angry Pakistani guy who has his hand on his
Yeah.
on his hips and he's just like looking down and says, "This is or what my FBI agent when he sees I took off on January 20th."
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only risk there is some sort of like subversive provocateur
Oh,
or somebody just
Yeah.
like who knows, be like fucking like I don't think this is gonna happen, but the only risk is is some sort of subversive element like doing something crazy or trying to get people to do something crazy.
Right.
I think the protesters, the pro gun people are gonna be too smart for that.
Ethan, do you think your boy Chris Cantwell is going to be there?
No, he's definitely not. I don't think he's allowed in the state.
Yeah,
of
isn't he in
Virginia.
like house arrest?
No. I think he's gotten done with all that, but I don't think he's allowed in the state of Virginia anymore. Like I think that was like part of like the conditions was like he's not allowed in Virginia now or
I
something.
think I heard that. Augustus of Invictus.
Oh,
Augustus
God.
Invictus.
He's not going to be there.
He's not going to be there either. He's in trouble for domestic abuse or
And
something.
kidnapping.
And
Kidnapping,
kidnapping.
yes.
In what state is that in? Is it in
I
Florida?
think he took him from South Carolina to Florida or vice versa, something like that. Not crater face
What is
fascist.
this like? Took his? I saw something about it. I only saw like a headline, but I don't know what the content.
Was he
of
like
this is.
sacrificing a goat or something?
No,
I-
What a
probably not.
ridiculous
It
suggestion.
it sounds like took his kids from the ex-wife kind of thing or something. But
Apparently
I have
took
no
her
idea if that
too.
has anything to do with it.
At
Oh,
gunpoint.
really?
Yeah.
I mean, my first reaction was like, oh, this might be something like a Cody Wilson thing, like where he got like set up or something.
That dude
Um,
does his own. He does not need to be set up.
Yeah,
But
that was
y-
my
yeah.
reaction, Phil.
But I don't know anything about it. I mean, maybe he is.
That's
Yeah,
okay. This is
guilty
assertion
of
basement,
whatever.
Ethan.
Assertion. This is
Assertion.
a safe space for assertions.
Yes, dude.
Dude, should I
Alright,
post this
that's fair.
podcast in We Are Catonsville private group on Facebook?
No, fuck off, Phil.
All right,
Yeah,
just
dude.
asking.
That's a yes.
I can get banned real quick.
What was that? There's something else I was gonna say about
Sorry, I
the
derailed it.
Virginia thing. I'm totally spacing on it. It might
Well,
come to me.
I don't know if you guys seen a lot of the pictures coming out of the fence, the fencing they have set up. Because Northam,
Yeah.
he declared the state of emergency, so no one can, like, there's no guns allowed in the Capitol building. And I guess they had plans on being, like, on the steps, but now they're not allowed to because, heaven forbid.
Are they allowed to bring tar and feathers though?
I hope.
Hopefully, yeah, but yeah, then they're gonna have like metal detectors and all this shit. However, like it's only within like the block that like the Capitol building is on. So now the plan is all the protesters who will be armed are just gonna be like 1 block away. So I don't really see how that's like. That doesn't really hurt the protesters. Like the fact that they're like a block away doesn't change.
I think it does. I think it clearly does. It's government saying, hey, you can't be here. No, you pay for this, and we're the government of the people, but, hey, you're not allowed to be here.
Well, so if anything, I mean, I feel like the fact that they're the governor, I'm just gonna say the governor to encapsulate like all the politicians whoever, the fact that the governor is turning this into like this insane optics thing, I think it ultimately is gonna sort of, if anything, backfire and sort of prove the point of the protesters and the pro-gun people that like this is why we need to have our guns, because you're a bunch of abusive psychopaths who like as soon as we even want to just have a rally, you break out fucking tanks and all this other crazy shit. So, like, if anything, it's really just proving the point of the protesters. So it seems like, if anything, I mean, ultimately, I don't think much of anything is going to come of any of this.
Yeah, I have that feeling
but just
too.
from the pure optics standpoint, if anything, like, the governor's just making it, his position look worse. Now, I do remember now the interesting thing I wanted to bring up now. I think it's like VCDL. I might not have it. The Virginia Citizens Defense League, I think. But they're like a pro. I think guns are their main thing, but they might be more of like like a right wing ACLU sort of an organization. But they went to Virginia court to get an injunction against this, saying like that's unconstitutional, it's illegal, he can't do it. The court upheld the state of emergency order, saying no guns. So then they took it to the Virginia Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, and it was upheld again. Now, what's interesting is that not only is it, pretty clear violation of, the Constitution, including the Virginia Constitution, which I think has pro-gun provisions that are even arguably stronger than the Second Amendment itself. Wow. So, it's obviously, anti-Second Amendment. It's anti-whatever the pro-gun provision is in the Virginia Constitution, but further still, back in, I think it might have been as recently as like 2012, there was a law specifically passed that said that during states of emergency, you can't like inhibit like gun ownership or carrying of guns or whatever. Like there was like a law passed within the past many years, like within the last 10 years, that addresses this exact situation. That
was that in response to something like Katrina, where like you need to like defend your property or something?
I mean, it wouldn't have been Katrina specifically, but it was.
Yes, not the past few years, but past 10 years.
I saw some article, like on some pro-gun website or something, talking about this, and they had the text of the law. Like there was a couple paragraphs in there that specifically saying like this is exactly what the governor specifically is not allowed to do. Like it's like the most clear, plain as day, case open and shut that I've ever seen. So it boggles the mind. The courts, obviously they'll stretch and twist anything as much as they can, but at least you can they come up with insane arguments, but at least it's an argument. I have no idea what their argument is here. Other than the law says that, but we're really scared, so we're just gonna say fuck the law.
Right.
Yeah. It's pretty mind-boggling.
Oh,
so.
And I saw some was it Zero Hedge or I forget.
Yes,
what page
that's a website, Phil.
The website that I saw where apparently they were doing testing off the coast of Florida and gradually moving it up closer towards Virginia of some type of interference with GPS.
Like GPS blocking sort of thing.
And it was testing, and it was supposed to be on They were on course to reach Virginia, like Richmond area, tomorrow. Because
why do they have to go up the coast?
Well, that's what they said. They showed the map of where it was going, and
is it a
circle,
boat?
circle.
Is it like a boat or something?
I don't know. I just saw barely the article, like the first few paragraphs. And
who's doing this test?
The United States military, something like that. I don't know. Search the
Nobody in this country would be able to get anywhere.
It was fucking aliens. I don't know.
This was on.
It was the lizard people. Okay, the Babylonian Brotherhood.
This was in the Flat Earth Facebook group.
Shut up, Glober.
Hey, Ethan, how is it?
Hey, Matt.
How is it your boy Donald Trump isn't coming into Virginia and protecting the Constitution, dude?
No,
noble white steed.
He has spoken.
I don't know. That is very
same thing.
conspicuous.
Explain to us the 69D chess.
It's hard to say. He seems to, much to my and many people's frustration, if I were to say there was a 4D chess to this, it's just that he's positioning himself as being not a Second Amendment quote unquote radical, not being super, super strong on Second Amendment. I guess maybe for election purposes, so in the debates and the campaign coming up, he can make the case to moderates, whoever, that I'm not some sort of radical on the Second Amendment. I believe in common sense gun control or some dumb shit like that. I don't know. It's stupid. It's annoying. It's frustrating. And
did you see the tweet?
What did he tweet?
His tweet. He said, "Okay, so this is from Donnie on the 17th." He says, your Second Amendment is under very serious attack in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. That's what happens when you vote for Democrats. They'll take your guns away. Republicans will win in Virginia in 2020. Thank you, Dems.
Yeah, but I mean, what does that say? I mean, doesn't he have like the Constitution, so he can go
right?
in when Democrats in Virginia are like break the Constitution? Can he go
President
in?
doesn't have any authority over that.
They don't have authority to do anything, but they still do it. They don't have authority to assassinate generals in Iran, but they do it anyway.
I mean, arguably, I'm sure somebody's made an argument that he does. I mean, ultimately, like the fucking Constitution has no fucking authority. I mean, what's your point?
You're right there.
I mean, fuck, I don't know. At least he made that tweet, and maybe he's right about that. Maybe
Or maybe
shit like this.
Maybe you're just
will
swinging
flip
from
it
his
back.
nutsack like fucking George of the Jungle.
No, I'm being critical of him here. I don't think I think he could be doing a lot more, and it's really annoying and frustrating that he doesn't. I wish he would. He could be a lot stronger on guns, and I find it pretty conspicuous that he's not. I don't really know what to make of that. I mean, I don't think he's himself anti-gun, but he's sure not doing a whole lot to help people. Other than, although he is, getting judges appointed, so as far as I can tell, the judges he is appointing are relatively, and I emphasize relatively, good. Which is ultimately the only way shit like this is going to get fixed is with the courts. We'll see what happens. I'm not necessarily optimistic, but what else? You look at like all the, how the fuck is the governor getting away with this in the first place? Well, because obviously the judges in fucking Virginia are just corrupt partisan pieces of shit.
Right.
Was that what started this whole boogaloo? Was it the fact that the Democrats
boogaloo has been brewing for a long time.
The Democrats won in Virginia, right? They now have control in the state legislature. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
And so is this a state thing or is this a national?
Well, they tried
thing?
to pass, or they've already passed a law banning AR-15s, right? That's what prompted this.
I think it's
or
what
they're
they're threatening
trying
to do in the
They're
next
threatening
session
to
or
do.
something like that.
Yeah, I think they were trying to essentially ban. I think it was like 2/3 of the guns in the state.
Yeah, the scary guns, the black ones.
Scary black
Yeah,
guns.
so I mean, Trump's tweet is exactly right. This is what happens when you vote for Democrats. They're gun grabbers. I think we all know that.
It's not
right?
controversial.
It's not controversial to me. I mean, that's
Should
why
be.
the Democratic base likes them. They want that.
Yeah.
They want all guns banned. I mean, that's what they want.
Right.
Yeah,
For the most part, yeah.
definitely.
Then no one will have guns ever again, right?
I saw
No weaponry.
it might have been something that came from like the governor of West Virginia, but somebody with some position of authority, mostly jokingly said something about how like West Virginia would love to annex any counties in Virginia that want to secede, which is the vast majority of the state.
Ethan, would you say that in 2020, if you don't want to go with a gun grabber, you've got to vote for a pussy grabber?
I like that. That's a good slogan. You're
Something,
doing great work
either
for
way,
the
something's
Trump
getting
campaign.
grabbed.
Something's getting grabbed. That could be a good title for the podcast.
Something's getting grabbed. All right.
Yeah.
A little rapey, but we'll go with it.
What is it? A little rapey these days?
Like that's
True.
ever stopped this podcast.
Some of the things, yeah, definitely. So I ultimately think nothing's really going to happen tomorrow. It's going to go relatively peacefully. Maybe an arrest here or there.
Oh yeah, probably.
There's a lot of people. I don't know. Do you think there's a lot of people that's more discouraged because of the police response to this from showing up, or does that encourage more people to show up?
Probably, if anything, it's encouraging more people to show up.
I'm torn.
Because like I was saying, like optically, this just makes the gun grabber position just look so much worse. It's clearly pissing off the pro-gun people that much more. So yeah, I think if anything, it's just going to increase the presence, and they're all going to be a block away. They're all going to have their guns.
Right.
I mean, clearly. The politicians, the governor, want to turn this into another Charlottesville. That's what they want. They're doing their damnedest to turn this into that. I don't
Maybe
think
throw
they're
some
gonna be
hoods into the
successful.
crowd or something.
Probably.
Maybe some tiki torches.
What'll be interesting is to see what the media does with it, because obviously they're going to do their best to just smear things. Would be like, oh, clearly look at all these Nazis or whatever. So, the worst I think we're going to see is probably some subversive elements, sneaking in amongst the crowd and putting on hoods or doing
sneaky
Nazi salutes
aisles,
and shit like that.
I mean, the real interesting question is this going to have any impact on whatever happens with this law that they're trying to push through?
I've never seen a protest that actually accomplished anything.
I mean, you could argue civil rights protests certainly accomplished things.
Well, yeah, but that's because they were fighting for the left, and so they would have done that anyway. I mean, look at 2013 in Maryland. I mean, they had the biggest protest they've ever had on the state house. They had hearings on the bills that literally went for days. It was the most testified against bill in all of Maryland history. They still rammed it through anyway.
Which one was that?
The Firearm Safety
one?
Act of 2013. The one that banned
fingerprinting,
banned assault. No, that's been in Maryland for decades. This is one that it banned assault weapons in Maryland. Thank God there was a grandfather law,
right?
Which I think, I could be totally wrong about this, but I think that's one of the big issues with the Virginia law is there's no grandfathering.
Yeah, doesn't it? I think it also has to do with private sales and the
So
gun
in
show,
other
scary
words,
loop.
if you already possess an AR-15 and they pass this law, you're suddenly a criminal, or you
Correct.
have X amount of time to turn it in, or something.
Ethan,
like that.
I think that might be the case, and that's one of the things that's got people really pissed off.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of different components. A lot of it is the same kind of shit that we already have in Maryland, have had for decades.
Ethan, what does it mean when people talk about the quote unquote gun show loophole?
There is no gun show loophole.
No, but the
They're just
media
talking-
said there is.
They're just
Has
talking
to be
about
true.
private sales, which are generally private sales are not regulated by the federal government. So
I thought when you sold a gun privately, aren't you technically supposed to both go down to the police station and
it
sign it over?
it depends on your state law. So that
But
so,
in
so
Maryland, wasn't it already that way, or you don't know?
in Maryland, handguns. I'm only going to go back several decades, so this is basically for our entire lives.
Mhm.
Obviously you go back 100 years, there were no regulations, but it's always been that handguns are regulated and they're sort of special weapons. There's a class of weapons called regulated weapons in Maryland, and regulated weapons are basically just scary rifles and handguns. So those you have always had to go through the Maryland background check process, which means either going through an FFL, i.e. a gun store or whatever, or you can also just go down to the state police barracks and fill out the paperwork there. They do a background check, you wait a week and blah, 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 and then you can do it. But that's only for handguns and scary rifles. For non-scary rifles, shotguns and stuff like that, private sales are pretty much unregulated. Now,
Right.
it is against the law to knowingly sell it to somebody to be a criminal or should have known was a criminal or whatever. So,
Yeah.
if you know that your neighbor is a felon and you sell a gun to them, that's still illegal.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it was unregulated.
But you can just walk into, Dick's Sporting Goods. or
I mean,
you used to be
I
able to.
may-
Yeah, not Dick's anymore.
Well, you can still buy shotguns there, right?
I may have hypothetically.
You can't buy anything there.
No, Dick's got rid of all their gun. Other
No,
gun sales, didn't they?
Phil, that's
No.
false. I
No, 'cause I just was in there.
literally saw guns at Dick's a month ago. I went
Yeah,
there.
they-
I
they
went there
don't- they
while
don't sell-
stoned
they
to
don't
check
sell
out guns.
AR-15s anymore.
I
They
think that was
might-
the other Dick's you went to.
I think a
That was
lot of
Dicks.com.
I think the Dick's policy was that they no longer sell AR-15s, period, and probably at or around that same time, a lot of Dick's stores just stopped carrying guns entirely. But
Yeah.
it's sort of like Walmart. Some Walmarts sell guns, some don't.
Yeah, but
You-
they're
you know,
selling off
like,
their inventory. Bunch
when
of
I was
hypocrites.
there, I thought I saw some AR-15 platform style rifles. Maybe they weren't AR-15s, maybe they were AR-10s or something. But I saw some guns that looked to be semi-automatic rifle when
It
I
was
was
an
there.
AR-69, dude.
Yeah, AR-69. Yeah.
I
No,
don't
I
know.
was very stoned
maybe
while
they were
there.
just
I was gonna say, did you bump your head?
I
and
don't
go
know.
there?
I mean, that's all just corporate
This after
policy.
your whoopsie fall.
But so here's the thing to understand. When you're dealing with an FFL, that's federally regulated, and the impetus for that was interstate commerce. And they could say if you're a proper business gun store, you're engaging in interstate commerce, and thus federal laws can apply to you. But private sales from one private citizen to another private citizen, the courts, I assume the Supreme Court, however many decades, generations ago, said, the federal government can't regulate that. We can't contort our legal arguments to say that this is interstate commerce. So that's purely a state thing. So, so even at a gun show, I mean, gun shows have no different laws than they do anywhere else. The fact is that many states, including Maryland, I'm not sure honestly what the state is, what the state of the law is today in Maryland, but I know at least used to be many years ago. I may have hypothetically, responded to a classified ad and bought a shotgun from a guy in a parking lot, and it's completely fucking legal. And that's true of most states in the country. Is that private sales are generally like you're not allowed to knowingly sell a gun to a felon.
Right.
But other than that, like it's whatever.
Fuck them. These laws suck.
Yeah,
They're just so stupid.
So I know that's one of the components of the Virginia law is that you're not allowed to do that anymore or something, and that's just purely just a state thing, and states can do whatever they want. Within reason, I guess, the Second Amendment was incorporated against the states in the Woolard decision back somewhere around 2010. I don't remember the year.
Son of a bitch.
So, it could be taken to the courts, but I'm sure the courts would uphold, laws about that. But anyway, this is getting off on a tangent. But that,
I love
because you asked about the gun show loophole. All they're talking about like at gun shows is that if you're a private seller and you're at a gun show, it's still treated like any other private sale, which is generally per state law not strictly regulated.
So it's just more easily facilitating a private sale.
Yeah, so like at a gun show, you may have a bunch of tables with gun stores that have FFLs.
Right.
And you may have some tables that just have private sellers that have their private collections.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in a state like Virginia, and it certainly used to be the case in Maryland, I'm not sure about it anymore, if you go up to the private sellers table, you just hand them cash and they hand you the gun. There is no background check.
Right.
But that's because that's the law at all times across the entire state.
Right.
Is that for handguns too, or that does not that doesn't apply to the regulated weapons, handguns and
now we're talking about Maryland specific law.
Yeah, because I bought a handgun from a gun show, but it was a company, and I still had to like wait 7 days, get a background check, and then like go to the store to get my gun.
And that has been true of handguns in Maryland for a long time.
Okay.
Whereas if it had been a private seller at a gun show with a shotgun, it would not have been. But if if it was that same guy, private individual, and he had a handgun, it would still be subject to not the federal background check and everything, but Maryland has their own background check with the 7-day wait and all that shit.
Yeah.
So many fucking laws.
Yeah,
it's
so convoluted.
They got to make sure you're not going to shoot up a school, I guess. I don't know.
Or at least you have to wait a week before you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Give you some time to think about killing little Timmy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things in Virginia that, like, Virginia seemed like they're really just copying all the Maryland laws. So there's the 1 gun a month rule, whatever.
I didn't know that was a rule.
I'm going to go home so angry just thinking about this shit. I'm not going to be able to
Do
sleep.
you even own any guns?
No. Not that I'm willing to talk about.
Jared, why the fuck would you like put people on blast like that, Jared? What the fuck is wrong with you, dude?
Ask me after the podcast.
Okay.
There might have
Not
been
on
a boating
record.
accident.
So, you guys ready for next topic?
Yeah,
let's do that.
Let's do
Why don't you
this.
settle down, Kyle?
All
right,
Just trying
so,
to move it along.
Dave Smith is in a little bit of hot water
Ooh, it's warm.
for sitting down with or appearing on Stefan Molyneux's show and calling him great. on
Ooh.
Twitter.
Oh, God forbid.
Yeah, he called him the great Stefan Molyneux, which he says the great. He says he calls everyone like the great. Like that's what his thing is when he has like a big guest on, or he just says the great.
Did Molyneux go on his show, or did he go?
He went
on
on Molyneux's. That's the reason why
they all have shows, right?
Because he went on he was in Dave Smith's defense after he got some shit from the Fakertarians group, primarily like John Hudak and all the crazy leftists that are in there. Like
Hudak's not a leftist.
no, he's not. But I said in the other like the typical from what
the
Tom
usual
Woods and everyone would
suspects.
call the usual suspects I call them, or
Or
the loser brigade. Yeah. So and of course I don't like Molyneux. I haven't listened to him in years, and I wasn't an avid follower of him at all ever. I like some of the stuff I heard from him, clearly, but everything else I just kind of did my own thing with it. I never really got into it. But anyway, so he went on his platform because he was like, look, this dude's got like 1 million followers on YouTube. Why would I not go on his platform?
Pretty sure it's not the first time they would have talked either. I'm pretty sure he's been on
Oh
Molyneux's
yeah,
show
he
before.
has. But it's the fact that after a lot of his white nationalist shits come to light, that he's at
Molyneux's never said anything white nationalist.
Oh, he's
I don't know, dude. That whole
yeah.
Poland tweet was a little weird.
tweet and video.
I mean,
and
was
video,
was he wrong about any of it?
Okay, so here's
Well,
what
I mean,
he
it's
said.
what
all he was talking
maybe.
about was homogeneity versus diversity. Wasn't saying anything specific about white people.
But he was talking about
He did
anecdotally
say
about
white
crime.
people, though, didn't he?
Yeah, he said I don't really see a lot of.
He's like, yeah, it's pretty much all white people here.
Yeah,
And there's
not
no
a lot of crime.
You know.
Wink,
And he's
wink.
all into the
He
like.
literally said just
I mean,
like
there's
that.
always an escape hatch when you say stuff like that, but you got to think like, how does this sound?
You know what he does?
Like, I would feel weird. Like, even if I noticed
okay,
something like
but-
that, I'd be like, maybe
Okay,
there's
so-
something to having like a population that's largely the same. I mean, people say that as a defense or an argument against like something like universal health care.
Well,
They say like, look at Sweden, they're able to do it. Well, they have a homogenous culture where they're able to pull that off. It's not like, well, they don't have any blacks running around, like
Well,
that's.
I'm
I mean, so are you critical?
Fried chickens.
Are you
Whoa, whoa!
Just kidding.
are you critical of Molyneux's like the things that he says, or are you just being critical of the optics of how he says it?
I mean, a lot of it's look. I don't know what's in his soul. Like, I don't see inside his brain, but the optics of like him getting really into like the race IQ stuff, and him talking about like Taylor Swift's eggs, and him talking about,
that's weird.
going to the whole Poland thing. Like, it all kind of adds up into like a lot of like weird.
And he said like if Weinstein had like
then the
like,
Jews. There's a lot of Jew stuff. Like, would Epstein have like done to the kids if they were Jewish? It's like, what are you saying? Like, and then of course he can explain it away after and be like, well, what I was really saying was, but it's like you're clearly tweeting stuff that is going to be provocative in the sense that it's gonna like touch on some racial or anti-Semitic like lines. And like, look, I don't know what the guy really thinks.
It's a little dicey, Ethan.
It's a little dicey. And I mean, look, I don't hate Dave for going on a show. Like, if he invited one of us on, I would go on a show. I mean, it's 1 million listeners, and I would, and maybe I would call him out on something. Maybe I wouldn't if it came up. I wouldn't go on there with like a vengeance.
I actually heard something from, it was Dave Smith put out within the last couple of months, I want to say, where he had some little rant where he went on about, I wish I could remember the exact context, but it was something like, if not, I'm pretty sure it was something like, there's a response to people that will criticize the media, say like, oh, the New York Times and Washington Post are trash and you can't trust them, blah, blah, blah. And people respond and say like, oh, well, you're just being anti-Semitic, like when you like criticize the media or criticize these news
yeah, that's
organizations
just
or something.
asinine. Yeah.
Well, it is, but Dave Smith's point was like, you fucking idiots. Like, really, all you're doing when you're saying that is that you're giving credibility to the alt-right and anti-Semitic people. Like, when you say this shit, that to me sounds like, oh, well, then I guess people, like Richard Spencer, whoever, like, they must have a point then, if I'm to believe what you, the critics, of them are saying. And so he went off on a rant about that. Or whatever. And I don't remember anybody, giving Dave Smith shit for that.
What do you say about immigration? He got in some libertarians were critical of him for his immigration position.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not gonna like say like don't talk to Stefan Mullen and Molyneux. Let's say Steph. Don't talk to
Melanin.
Melanin. Steph Melanin. Yeah.
Dude, that's gotta be the podcast.
Yeah.
Steph Melanin.
Let's do it.
If he, okay, fine. He's like kind of pro-border. He's sort of anti-immigration. He makes the argument of like the demographics, voting for Democrats. I mean, okay, fine. I don't see that as like being like, oh, he's a super racist. I don't take that line on that sort of comment. It's just more so the weird tweets about Jews and like, Taylor Swift's eggs, and I'm just like, why would you want to like?
I'm not aware of him making any comments about Jews. Now you said there's something about.
There's a
Epstein.
few tweets, yeah.
Yeah, he
Can you
said
find
something.
that?
Yeah, he said something along the lines of like Epstein's like if Epstein would have been
There was a few of them.
if Epstein would have been targeting Jewish girls, would the media care or something like along those lines? And
that is a curious one.
He said okay.
Look, maybe he has some other point that he would say after this would be explain it away, but it's like the fact that you're tweeting that is like you're playing the sort of the race baiting game there.
Clearly.
That like Al Sharpton and like all these guys do, where it's like you're sort of like tossing it out there. And it's like, oh,
I see
it's
what
gonna
you're
light
saying.
up my tweet with like a bunch of angry people calling me an anti-Semite, and then I'm gonna come out and be like, oh, ha, I actually meant this. You know, it's just like
I mean, I
dishonest.
see what you're saying, but to compare it to like somebody like an Al Sharpton race baiter, I think that's
well, okay, Sharpton's
that's
way more extreme for sure.
I mean,
Sharpton never retracts anything.
Well, neither does
I
Steph.
I don't
The
think
only thing
that's-
I've ever heard Steph retract was his whole thing about how like
He retracted his like whole theory on Robin Williams when he went on Joe Rogan. Joe was like, "You don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dude." He was
I
trying to make this
remember
whole thing
that.
where it was like he killed himself because of his like wife or something like that. And Joe was like, "No, I know that for a fact is not true."
Steph made it to
can't
Joe
remember.
Rogan.
Oh yeah, dude.
Wow.
He's been on there twice, but this
Oh,
was
wow.
It was
years ago.
Yeah,
This
it
was
was
years
a while
ago.
ago.
The problem I have with Stefan
I mean,
Molyneux.
if you want to say he can be a little sort of clickbaity with some of the stuff he says, you know, like that's probably fair. But there's a big difference between saying like, oh, the optics of how you approach this are bad. Like that's a big difference than, you know, you're wrong, you're a bad person, which I know you're not saying, but it just seems like, you know, your reaction, I think a reasonably fair criticism is that, oh, you know, the optics of, you know, how inflammatory he can be, like, isn't great. Like, okay, that's fair.
Or I mean,
But,
I
like,
don't even
it's-
mind
in
somebody
terms
being
of the stuff that he
inflammatory.
says, like you talk about like the race and IQ stuff, like, okay, but like he's not saying it from a position of being racist. Like, who's it? Sam Harris, you know, is like big time lefty. You know, he actually, at least like probably a year or two
he
ago,
had Douglas Murray on.
yeah, Douglas Murray
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
and like he starts a podcast by saying like, you know, like I used to believe like everything people said about you, like, oh, you're just like a horribly racist person,
Yeah,
blah
yeah.
blah blah. And
Yeah,
he's
but
like,
I
but then
feel-
I actually
yeah.
read the book and I realized like, holy shit, like no, this is like some like the most thorough, legitimate social science I've ever read. Sam Harris is a scientist himself, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
But a lot
and,
of
and he's like, you know, like there's actually something valid here that's worth talking about. It's like, well, okay, so like,
But it's how it's being presented. I think that really.
well, okay, that's a
you know.
fair criticism, but
Yeah.
that's a very different thing than saying like, how dare you talk about
no,
you know,
no.
race and IQ or something. It's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, like that's fine, but like the fact that he chooses to talk about things that other people think are uncouth, you know, I don't. You know, especially being like, you know, libertarians in the libertarian space, like obviously like we're not talking about this stuff because we're trying to be sensitive to people's feelings and not offend anybody or whatever. So
Sure.
Okay, my thing with that is the whole thing race and IQ was I wish I had more of the facts to back up my claims in this, but Vinnie Marshall on Think Liberty, he did a good like podcast where he attacked this whole race IQ thing, and he came up with like a ton of good points about the people who did the research on the race IQ thing were skewed and were paid for by a bunch of like almost like white supremacist groups or like that back these studies, and it's not really legitimate. I wish I had more of the stuff. It's been so it was like 2 years ago.
was he attacking IQ itself or like the specific
The race IQ. The race IQ. And he was
specifically
just
racial
everything. Because it was
differences.
right when Stefan Mullen took that turn, like 2 years ago where he started really getting into it, where they had an episode of it and they dedicated it solely to that. And it was really good. I learned a lot of stuff in it, but I clearly didn't stick with it in my head right now to repeat. But a separate thing from that is what you're talking about, what Stefan Molyneux does. He does this. He comes from the same school of Nicholas Sarwark, where he says something without directly saying it, but he wants it to be inferred to you. You know, you to infer what he's saying, and then once you come back and say, he'll be like, "Oh, you're just a racist." Oh, I didn't say anything. Nick Sarwark
That's
does the
exactly,
same
yeah.
fucking
Yeah,
bullshit, and it pisses me off. It's like they dance around this whole subject. Like Richard Spencer does a lot of that shit. A lot of these right wing people do that. They talk. They go off on these real long, like sophisticated tangents without saying what they really like. Here's my point. Let's base it across your point.
It's insinuation. Is that the word you're looking for?
Well, yeah,
Insinuate
yeah.
something.
But Nick Sarwark does the same exact shit, and it's like, well, where did I say that? Show me where I said that. And then like you go back and well, that's not what I said. And it's the same thing Stefan Molyneux does, and it drives me crazy. I hate when people do that. And I think I've like I said, I haven't liked him in a while. I don't trust a guy that close to a camera talking into it. It's weird. I never liked
that. That's probably a fair criticism.
that with like a white background,
Yeah.
and he's totally bald.
All I think I would say is that, you know, you got to be really careful when you're talking about like, well, I read in between the lines and now I know what you're getting at. Like,
Okay.
I'm not saying there's no validity to that. There's definitely been plenty of times like you see somebody saying something, you're like, I clearly know what they're trying to say here, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get that. That's the thing. I'm not saying that's totally invalid. I'm just saying I think you should be pretty careful about that because I think that Molyneux specifically in his case, he's pretty explicit, not very afraid to say things explicitly that he actually means. He says plenty of very controversial, inflammatory things that are known to be extremely unpopular with 99% of the population. And so to start reading things beyond what he says explicitly, in his case, I think you start to get on rocky territory.
All right. Well, okay. So he had a tweet most recently. It was a tweet of a picture of a bunch of kids from like the 1980s. It was a kindergarten class picture from one school, and it was like in 1970 or 1980, something like that. And then it had one next to it, and it was a bunch of white kids. And then next to it, same school, and it was 2019, and it was mostly all like Hispanic kids. And he literally, his exact quote was, "We were not asked."
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Okay. It's
Why
true,
is he posting pictures of little kids and make so? I'm not supposed to
I mean,
take away. He thinks that's a bad thing.
He's been pretty open. Well, I would say his point there is, and these are things he's been pretty explicit about, is that people have been opposed to immigration for a long time. So clearly the politicians are doing exactly the opposite of what people want to do. I mean,
I'm against force.
There have been polls for decades and decades and decades. Like, this is one of the number one things people in America care about is immigration and controlling immigration. That's been true for literally decades, generations at this point. And the politicians go and do it anyway, both Republicans and Democrats.
Mhm.
So, his point of we were not asked, like, well, that's a good point. Like,
Who's we? Since when do we start as an individualist start saying we? Like, so now he's speaking for me as a white person?
The citizens of the U.S. It's established statistical fact that for decades, the entire population of the U.S., 60, 70% of Americans think that immigration is the number one priority, should be the number one
I mean,
priority.
how do we know that these people didn't all come here legally? I mean, just from a picture of a kindergarten classroom, we're to assume that they're all illegal immigrants.
Lots of people don't want legal immigration either. I mean, there's all sorts of.
Okay, but
That
then
seems like a
but they
very
did ask.
anti-libertarian position.
And
I'm not talking about libertarians. I'm talking about the American.
But he's supposed to
Okay.
be a libertarian. I mean,
But
he's a
wait,
libertarian guy.
So if
His-
it's legal
his-
immigration,
Oh no, he isn't. I don't think so. He did a video where he said like, I'm breaking up with libertarians. Like, I don't want anything to do with this anymore.
according to Dave Smith, he claims that up until even as recent
That
as
he's
like
an
this year,
ANCAP.
he's an ANCAP.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
he's classifying libertarian outside of ANCAP and playing the semantics game. But if as an ANCAP, I mean, you shouldn't be, there's nothing, you shouldn't be for, it's not within the confines of being an ANCAP to say like the state should restrict, a specific culture from coming in. I mean, sure, that's within the the rights of your own property and all that, but
so here's where you start going off and on these different tangents that aren't. I mean, that's fine. That's maybe not totally unfair, but the caption specifically says we were not asked. That is simply factually true. That I'm not talking about libertarians. I'm talking about Americans in general. The politicians are not doing what the people want them to do. So in the context of America, which is supposed to be a representative democracy, the representatives are not doing what the demos, the people.
yeah, but I mean
want
that's
them
neither
to do.
here nor there. I
I'll-
mean, if you're an ANCAP,
Well,
you shouldn't even care about that. Like,
Well,
like
you
that
should,
shouldn't
you
even
should,
be.
you should care that the political class not only exists but is doing exactly the opposite
But
of
it's
what
not
the people want them to
if
do.
If there were legal immigrants in that
But I
picture,
don't
then he
think-
said they were asked because they asked the government to be citizens, and by that logic, we are the citizen. Or we're the state.
I think you guys are really torturing this more than I'm just talking
I
about this
just-
one isolated point. Is the government doing things that are the exact opposite of what the people they're supposed to be representing doing?
Ethan,
Yes,
not
so
all
that's
the
true.
people are anti-immigration. A lot of people are pro-immigration. A lot of people want no restrictions at all.
Statistically, if you want to talk about the majority of the people, that's not true.
I
It
don't
hasn't been
know
for
that it
decades.
is true. I mean, I think it depends on the area that you look at.
There are countless statistics and polls taken and compiled over decades and decades that show this all to be true. Now, are they flawed? Are they imperfect? I'm sure, I guess, but there's just overwhelming data supporting the fact that the majority of Americans want immigration, both illegal and legal, to be controlled further than what it is now. Right or wrong, I'm just saying those are the facts.
I mean, I'm not saying that what he's saying isn't necessarily true, but
The
question is, why is he saying it?
the other?
Well, who does he mean
So
by we?
to point out that the government is not doing what people want to do, doesn't that delegitimize the government itself? That's a pretty ANCAP position. Saying, look, you want one thing, your government is doing the other thing. Stop fucking believing that the government is going to do what you want it to do. That's pretty ANCAP. Independent of the whole immigration and the demographic thing, like that's just pretty simply factually true.
Yeah,
He's
but he
pointed
needs to
that
make
out.
that more
And I think
explicit
that's
then,
fa-
if that's his argument.
Well, okay, so now you're complaining about the optics of how he approaches it, and that may be a totally fair
I mean, that's
criticism.
it's ultimately
fine.
what I'm saying.
But I feel like you guys are ascribing things to Molyneux that you're just inferring these different things, or whatever. Now, as far as the why,
Because he's
but
implying. I'm
why-
only
but
inferring
why
because
are-
he's implying.
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
okay, that's fine. But also in terms of specifically, but one might say, but why are you showing all the Hispanic kids? Well, I mean, that's who the overwhelming amount of immigrants have been. But specifically, and this is
I mean, I
addressing
understand what
this is
it's
addressing
demonstrating.
another point that I brought up was, he's been very explicit that he does not think diversity is a good thing, and he thinks there's a lot of advantages to homogeneity. He's been very explicit about that. He's not saying specifically they have to be white and that white people are better than another person. He's been pretty explicit that like people do better and are happier and function better, have better functioning governments, schools, whatever, when there's homogeneity in the community, when people have something they can bond over, whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be explicitly racial or whatever, but the idea that diversity is our strength is the exact
well, that's just-
opposite
yeah.
of the truth.
Yeah,
That's
of course.
it.
I
And
don't
I'm not
subscribe to
saying
that at
that
all.
forced diversity or forced anything.
I'm
is
against
good.
forced.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
any kind of
okay,
force.
that's
but
fine, but just because you're ANCAP purist doesn't mean everybody is. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I'm just saying that let's look at what's specifically on the table. He's saying that they're not representing you, and the diversity is not our strength. Those are the two very explicit things in the tweet as you've described it. I don't think there's much argument against either of those things.
But if
And
he
you
came
can
out and said
criticize
that,
them.
then we wouldn't be having this conversation because we'd be like, he
feel
said that. But he said he dances the line.
That
It's-
is what he said,
but
and
you can
everything
see an
else beyond that is what
interpretation.
you're inferring.
But okay,
And
you
you
have
might not
one
be
tweet.
wrong.
You have one tweet that is going to go super viral, right? Because people are going to be like, the left is going to pick it up. They're going to be like, oh, Stefan Mullen is a racist.
He
blah, blah,
is
blah, blah.
probably being pretty deliberately clickbaity with it.
He's
and
being very
inflammatory.
clickbaity, and the clickbait of it
Okay.
is, I look at that and I see, we were not asked. I see a picture of a bunch of white people, and then they're being replaced with dark people or Hispanic people, and the inference
the Browns.
is that those white people were not asked to be replaced.
That's true.
Right, but that's then you're coming at it from
Okay.
a racial aspect. You're coming at it from an angle of, these people have been displaced. There's white genocide. This whole thing. It brings up all these inferences that, instead of just saying like, look,
I mean,
the
even stuff- even the
demographics.
stuff you're talking about, I think is pretty explicit in it, and you can disagree with that, but it doesn't even sound like you disagree that much with this whole idea of maybe a racial group doesn't like being demographically replaced, and even though they are the majority of the population, the government goes ahead and does it anyway. I mean, again, this sounds like an alt-right talking point, but that's basically what it sounds like you're agreeing with, and I do think it's a fair criticism. I
didn't say I agreed with it.
Well, okay.
I mean, I'm for people freely associating, and if people want to associate only with their racial group, then that's fine. I mean, I'm definitely not for forcing them out of that, but I don't,
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if people want to have communities, if they want to have Germantown and live with a bunch of German people, and they want to have
Which is how it used to
Pikesville
be.
and live with a bunch of Jews,
Yeah, which
That's-
is
that's
naturally
fine.
which is
What's Pikesville's
naturally what
nickname?
happens.
that's
a
fine. But
lot.
it's if suddenly a bunch of white people, or if Pikesville have a bunch of, which is happening right now. I mean, there's a lot more black people living there right now.
Yeah, Pikesville has a very clever nickname. I don't know if
you
you.
motherfucker.
See, there you go, reading into things again.
No, but I mean, it's if black people start opening businesses in Pikesville and blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden by the end of 10 years it's all black people. I don't think it'd be right for some Jews that used to live there to be like, we have been replaced.
Get their tiki
I mean,
torches.
now if it was the government came in and started stealing everyone's property and putting black people in there and tearing down their businesses
Well,
and
which
putting
is-
black people in there,
Well,
then yeah.
which kind of does happen with forced Section 8 and stuff like that.
Well,
I'll
sure.
agree. Yeah, that it's like a backdoor type of
Yeah.
forced integration.
So I mean, so what happens? What do you do when this happens on a national scale?
I mean, look, and I'm not
I
for
feel like this
that.
is a cheap argument, but let's say this was in Israel. Israel is pretty explicitly like a racial.
I gotta run,
nation.
guys.
Good to see
Yeah,
you.
I mean, Israel's completely different, though. I mean,
Well, okay, that's fine, but I'm just saying, like, if
Bye, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle.
if Israelis,
Kyle.
if Israelis, if the Israeli government suddenly starts like deliberately shipping in, a bunch of Arabs, Muslims, like whoever, and the Jewish Israeli population says like, hey, wait a second, like we're gonna be a minority in like 10 years in Israel, like this is supposed to be a place for us.
Yeah, I mean,
I,
look-
I think it would be perfectly reasonable, legitimate for them to say like, look, we want to.
yeah, I mean, if they were literally
keep this
if they were
homogeneously
literally
Jewish.
shipping them in and building them houses,
But they're
and
literally
giving them-
they're shipping in other Jews to take.
But we're
and
talking
Palestinian,
about-
like I don't like
well,
Vietnam.
and-
look, and I'm we've talked about it before.
you have Democratic politicians on the debate stage saying like, yes, we should not only open our borders, but we should give them free health care
Oh, yeah.
paid for by
And
the
that-
taxpayers.
Of course, I'm
whatever.
disagreeing
Garbage,
with
yeah.
that. Yeah,
So-
yeah.
So
All
okay.
I'm saying- yeah,
so,
all I'm saying
so
is,
there's
like,
there's a valid thing to be said there. You just think the way that he said it was uncouth and doesn't look good, and that's a perfectly valid criticism.
Yeah, ultimately that's what I'm saying, and
Okay.
I'm saying, find a better way that's not as. I mean, I don't mind being inflammatory, but you're being inflammatory and giving people good reason to think that you have some, that you're a racist. Whether he is or not, I don't live in his head. I don't live in his heart.
Well,
I don't know if he's truly a racist, but like that stuff sounds pretty racist. And I'm not someone that throws around. We've had our fair share of people calling us racist. So I try not to toss around the term very loosely, but there's some stuff that he says where you kind of scratch your head and you're like, this sounds kind of racist. But whether it is or not, I don't know.
I think that's more of just the general conditioning that we are all subject and victim to of the general society and culture that we live in that just makes us hypersensitized to this stuff. Because I feel like when we've been talking this stuff out, we're coming to conclusions that we generally have some,
And that's
even
why
if
I
we don't
prefer
agree, even if we
podcasts.
don't agree with the points. Like I
Yeah.
feel like we sort of understand, like there is some principle here, there is a valid argument that's not inherently racist or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, it sounds like we've sort of come to an agreement that like, yeah, he has some reasonable points. He's just making them in a way that are going to sound kind of racist to a lot of the population.
Yeah.
And that's a fair criticism, but I don't think that's just a criticism of his approach, not of him as a person or even like his principles or the things that he's arguing for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more
And
I'm more frustrated with
let's,
him.
Let's delineate. Let's make a difference there. Let's delineate the difference between like, does he have bad optics? Maybe okay, that's a fair criticism. That's different from, is he like a racist? Blah blah blah. And I know you're not saying that either, but it seems like we're sort of blurring those two concepts.
I'm saying I don't know. I haven't listened to
That's
like
fair.
every recent
Yeah.
show that he's had.
Me neither.
I kind of stopped listening when he really got on the Trump train, which I didn't ascribe to racism or anything like that. I just like I don't know why you're getting so into Trump now.
I think he wanted to broaden his audience.
Well, yeah,
Like,
I
I
mean,
think
I think a
Mullen-
lot of it is to get an audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
And,
in
there was some
in all
other-
fairness, though, too, like we pointed this out. Trump has changed like a lot of people, right? I think
To what?
I think Trump changed a lot of people. I think Trump changed.
You got a lot of people to hate McCain.
I think
That's
I think
good,
I think
right?
I think Trump changed Stefan Molyneux. I think Trump changed what's his name, Chris Cantwell. I think
I think that was really.
I think
Trump.
so. I think all this stuff kind of happened at the same time.
It did. I'm not sure that Trump was a singular catalyst, though. I think he's sort of more so. He's the product of the zeitgeist, if you will.
I think Trump's also radicalized the left.
Yeah, probably, to some extent.
Well, yeah. I mean, where would to sort of shift gears? Where would where would this whole democratic socialist movement be without Trump? I mean, was that, Bernie got shut down, imagine Hillary had won. I mean, would they be as radicalized against Hillary? They wouldn't have.
No, they'd be
know?
in the tank for. They're the foot soldiers of the neoliberal elite. I mean, whether they realize it or not, probably not, because they're mostly just useful idiots. But I mean, look at fucking Bernie. Bernie is like, he's their Ron Paul, if you will. Ron Paul never came out and then endorsed John McCain or
Right,
Romney.
Right.
But Bernie went and endorsed Hillary.
That's because she gave him a jet and a bunch of money
Yeah.
to buy a second house. But do you think Epstein would still be alive if Hillary won?
If Hillary won?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because he never would have been arrested.
There you go. That was the correct answer.
Yeah. So there's one more good thing that's happened under Trump.
Okay,
just
so,
came
so,
right in my
so
head.
like
I had to say
seriously,
it.
you think Epstein wouldn't have gotten arrested under Hillary?
No.
Really? I mean, well, here's the thing. Here's one of my.
Why
things.
would she have him?
Well, let me finish. Okay, so here's one of my things with Trump. I
Allow me
think
to retort.
Trump has been conspicuously quiet on the whole Epstein thing, and that like anytime Trump has like any sort of like ridiculous thought, he doesn't seem to think twice about just tweeting it, right? But he hasn't really said very much about Epstein, which kind of like leads me to jump to the conclusion like maybe Trump had some dealings with Epstein that could come out eventually. Maybe.
I'm skeptical of that. I mean,
I don't
I
know,
know.
I'm just saying. I mean, you know what I'm saying, though, dude. He usually says whatever he thinks, you know, with very little restraint.
He's a lot. No, I think he's very deliberate and strategic with his tweeting, and the fact that
dude, he
the
tweets
fact-
like
the fact that-
20,000 times a day.
The fact that it looks spontaneous, again, I think that's calculated and deliberate. I do think his lack of saying much about it is a little conspicuous. I'm not sure. I wouldn't necessarily jump to like, oh, that means like he's like, you know, Epstein got to him or he was like doing shit with Epstein necessarily.
No, I didn't. I'm just saying it's a little weird for Trump, dude.
Well, I seem to recall, I don't remember the details, but like in like, you know, the week or two after the quote unquote suicide, the murder of Epstein,
I don't remember
that
saying
I'm pretty sure Attorney General Barr like came out and said like, oh, we're going to look into this, like we're going to be conducting our own investigation and blah blah blah, and what if anything has come of that. I'm not aware of anything, and I'm not holding my breath for anything to come of that. But I'm pretty sure like the Justice Department came out and had a couple things to say after it, saying like, yeah, we think this looks sketchy too, and we're going to have our own people do an investigation or whatever. Now, as far as I know, and I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, they say that and then nothing ever really happens.
Oh yeah, because it's just people just kind of
yeah.
you know.
I mean, these are huge organizations completely filled to the brim with corrupt people. So even if Trump and Barr really did want to do an investigation, get to the bottom of it, they couldn't if they wanted to anyway. And I'm not saying that I am convinced that they do want to get to the bottom of it. I don't know.
They don't.
Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know much about this Barr guy. So, you know, he seems to be, you know, on Trump's team more or less, but, you know, so is
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell more or less. And I don't fucking trust
Yeah, I
any
don't
of
trust
those
them.
guys.
Shit. I don't trust
So-
fuck all of them.
Yeah.
I
So,
don't trust them at all.
you know, I'm not optimistic, you know. I mean, I do honestly think that Trump is a pretty calculating guy.
So, like, did
And
you
it
hear
may just be
anything?
that it's a lost
Ethan.
cause. There's nothing he's going to be able to do about it, and so he's just going to leave it at that, rather than go hard about the Epstein thing and then realize that he can't do anything about it anyway because there's just miles and miles of corruption between him and the truth. And so, what the fuck's he going to do about it? Like, just make a big stink about it and then fail to do anything and just look like a failure? Like, that doesn't help him either. So, I don't know. I'm not happy about it. I wish he would go hard at him, but I don't think we should be shocked that he's not.
Well, didn't I think I just heard like recently in the past couple days that Trump has somebody on his like legal defense team that is from like Epstein's legal defense.
Oh yeah, no. Well, yes, no. I heard this too, including who's that guy that's on fucking TV all the time? The old guy, super famous lawyer. I'm totally brain farting. It'll come to me later.
Yeah, dude, I don't know.
But yeah, no, like people that represented Epstein are now representing. I mean, it's not like
That's
exclusively. It's like
weird.
it's the exact same team. This one guy, he's like one of the most Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz.
Ah, yeah.
Is one of the people that's representing Trump in the Senate trial. But
Well,
and
he's not that big, dude.
Dershowitz had represented Epstein in the past.
He's got a Jew last name. Is that why?
I mean,
you must know him.
I mean, he is a Jew.
You must share a bowl of matzo ball
okay,
soup with him.
Stefan. You fucking anti-Semite.
Dude, he's a lawyer. Come
Ethan's
on.
Jewish too. Ethan has a Jew card.
Yeah, man, I've got my own Jew card.
I don't.
Um, But
My
yeah,
name doesn't
no,
even
so,
sound
so
Jewish.
I know he has at least Dershowitz. I think there might have been one or two other lawyers, but I mean, of course, there are whole fucking teams and whatever. I don't think it's like he specifically went to like, I need to get Epstein's guys to represent me. He's like, well, no, it's Alan Dershowitz, like one of like the most prolific isn't the word, like he's one of the famous, most powerful lawyers in the country, whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a great look, but it is what it is.
Dear, what it is.
Well, on that note, we're going to take things on over to the after hours. Yeah, so we have T-shirts for sale over at libertariancountry.com. And if you type in the code PRL or the code PRL podcast, you'll receive a 10% discount. And if you visit us over at patreon.com and throw us a minimum of $1 a month to help keep the electricity on down here in Anarchy Basement, you will gain access to our after hours program. Until next time, live free
Or die.